North Mankato city leaders are looking at changing the city's code on cannabis sales, considering a new lighting on a number of popular streets, and looking at the city's rental density study. Sophia Jernander has a rundown of tonight's city council meeting.
At Monday night's North Mankato City Council meeting, the largest portion of the meeting was focused on rental density, or the amount of rental units allowed in a given area. According to city officials, in 2016, city leaders adopted an ordinance to put a rental density cap of 10% in place. Now, in 2024, this information is under review as the city decides the effectiveness of the ordinance. It was determined to be effective particularly in lower North Mankato, where the conversion of single-family homes to rental properties raised concern. Next, focus shifted to plans for new updates to Belgrade Avenue. This would include reconstruction to 3 lanes, parking on both sides, wider sidewalks, and decorative lighting. If approved, this project would happen in 2026. Finally, it was announced that the city will hold a public hearing on October 2nd concerning an ordinance that would amend the city code relating to cannabis licenses. It would raise the number of allowed licenses from 5 to 10. In North Mankato, Sophia Jernander, KEYC News Now.
Well, phase 2 of a Safe Routes to School project in North Mankato kicked off today. That construction will include closing portions of the right lane on the northbound side of Lookout Drive. That closure will impact the street from Marine Lane to Commerce Drive. According to the city, driveways from Lookout Drive to adjacent businesses and residences will remain open, but they'll have to close for 1 week in the near future. City officials will be in contact with those businesses and residents about the timing of those closures and alternate parking options. The construction project is meant to improve walking and bike routes leading to and from Hoover Elementary.